Welcome to another provider preview. I'm Julie Hatfield, still president of Beyond the Game Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to take a proactive and holistic approach to transitioning our athletes from sports to career and life beyond the game. We do this through our framework of coaching and education and practical skill building, as well as aligning ourselves with providers who can service our student athletes in their specific needs. With that said, I'm so honored to introduce one of our service providers, certified personal trainer and comedian, Coach Crystal Gordon. Coach, happy to have you in the room today.
Thanks, Julie. I'm really happy to be here. I'm super excited about this alliance. So
Yeah,
fun.
amazing. Well, we're going to dig in here in a little bit, but just so everyone knows, Crystal is going to be playing an integral and consistent role with our student athletes at the collegiate level. So, one of the many questions that we get from athletes in the transition from sports to life beyond the game is, how will I stay physically healthy? What does fitness look like for me as an athlete when I'm not told where to be, what to lift, how to lift it? I don't have full access to a gym all of the time, right? So these are real concerns for our athletes, Crystal. And here at the Alliance, we believe that training like an athlete is a lifelong endeavor. It never ends, it just changes, which is exactly why we've invited you into the fold of the Alliance to provide our students with fitness practices, techniques that can carry them for the rest of their lives. So I am just thrilled to have this conversation today, Crystal. To get us started, why don't you share just a little bit about your athlete journey, your story as a former athlete, and how it ultimately led you to where you are today? Would just love a little backstory.
Sure. So I played sports all throughout high school. I played sports in college. And I just remember, it's just kind of that whole go, go, go again, being told where to be, what to do, when to do it. And I remember, at a certain point, there was this transition period from, that lifestyle into, okay, now we're going to go work a job beyond college, right? Which is why I love the whole beyond the game concept. And I remember, while I was still in college and waiting tables and, trying to pay off my loans, and while I was, actively applying in my field of psychology, and I just remember kind of feeling a little bit lost. And that's when I joined a local gym, and then I met my first mentor. And so I had my first mentor, and it wasn't until probably late 20s that I really started to become aware of my skill sets, right? As an entrepreneur, building my own business and that sort of thing. So when I kind of woke up to that whole aspect or that whole piece, I really realized that I wanted to be able to share this with other people. And in doing that, fast forward through lots of different twists and turns that life kind of takes us on. And so that's what kind of led me to start my own business in virtual training. Of course, COVID kind of helped push that along just a little bit for us because I was working at a box gym previously before that. So it's just kind of really interesting how life forces us to become creative and and kind of shows us the way.
Yeah, I love that, Crystal. One thing that keeps coming to mind for me, and when I think of you, I always think holistic, right? It's not just about the weights you're lifting or the movements you're doing. Bring me up to speed on what led you to take a more holistic approach to what you do, and what does that even look like for you?
Sure. So, well, I remember back in the day, it was, just about body image, right? Or the way it looks on the outside. And so when folks start there, right, that's the very kind of outside in approach. And so that's kind of where a lot of this starts, right? In terms of like, I want to be a certain weight, I want to be skinnier, I want to be, whatever it is for the game. And so there's a lot that comes along with that whole body image piece. And so when you're talking about a person, we love in our society to kind of compartmentalize, right? Like you go to the shoulder doctor, you go to the elbow doctor, you go to the knee doctor, but no one's like assessing the whole person as a unit. And I think that that's really, really important. Not only the physical, but also like what's going on with your mental, emotional side of things as well. And so I really like to bring in the piece of, visualization and thinking and picturing yourself in certain spaces doing, hitting that winning shot, succeeding in your career. So that wholesome approach goes much deeper than just the physical body. And I also feel like, it definitely has to be coupled with, nutritious foods is really, really important. So yeah, I just started to realize that, like, we have all these different compartments, and I think it's really important that we really pull everything together and look at it as a whole unit, right? As a whole person. It's really important.
Yeah. Love that. And we know, as you're speaking, like that's going to impact any athlete in their game,
Right.
right? So there's this amazing ripple effect that happens when we think preparing for life after the game with our proactive approach, we really help amplify what they're doing in the game. What do
Right.
you think, Crystal, for you have been some of your greatest lessons as an athlete that you've carried into your career? So, what did you learn as an athlete that has helped you in your life as an entrepreneur, in your life as a certified personal trainer?
Practice.
Reps.
Sets and reps. Yeah. Well, just like anything, when you first start, you're going to be bad at it, right? I mean, but I think that practice of showing up on time, being prepared, and at the end of the day, not trying to take anything too seriously, I think is really, really important. Because you're going to have bad shots, you're going to have bad practice, and that's just going to be, it's part of the game, right? And understanding that when you're in it, because sometimes we get a little lost in those feelings where we might get down on ourselves, or that type of thing. I think it's really important to be able to change that feeling and change that emotion and be able to redirect that. And the faster we can kind of do that and switch those emotions, the more malleable, or the more we can kind of ebb and flow when stuff gets thrown at us at work, right? So that we're not like, oh, my boss doesn't like me, or my, this, that, or the other thing. It's just, we take a lot of that kind of out of it. So I would say that I think true grit and mental resilience and practice are those things that come from that.
So good. And what I hear in that too is like it's a game of adjustments, right? And fitness in the way that you show up and present it and share it is really getting practice in a lot of those things that you're speaking about. So we absolutely love that about your approach to fitness beyond the game. Now, a lot of our athletes, they're going to the gym every day or at least the majority of the week. They're maybe pressing weight, um, bench pressing, squatting, all those things, heavy things, pick them up, lift them up, put them down, right? With
Yeah,
your
right.
approach to training beyond the game, so when maybe they don't have access to that, how do you support athletes in that? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of times athletes, we have seasons, right? So you have the season where you're on and you're performing, and then we have the off season. And usually during that off season is where we don't have as much structure. We don't have people telling us as much, like how to practice, how often to practice, and what to be doing. And I think that when you're in the off season, or in the future when you travel for work, or you travel on vacation and you're traveling and going different places, to be able to still land and come to a place where the person, the community, and so you still feel like this sense of connectedness. Because I understand from being an athlete that there are moments where we feel alone, like we're the only ones in it. And to have a person who, regardless of where you are in life, where you're traveling, whether your game is, you're in season or not, and to have like a nice place to land, is really important. And then I would also say that every athlete, even all these young athletes, we eventually turn 80 years old, right? Like everyone, if we have, if we're
If we're
graced with
lucky,
the ability,
right?
if we're graced with the ability, and to get into that old age, the body essentially starts to kind of break down. And I know that athleticism and playing in these games are often one-sided, and we're training, swinging in one direction, and so it's really important that, although we really want to preserve that, your right arm or your left arm, and we really need to make sure that that works, I think it's really important not to forget the whole rest of the body, and making sure that we have strength in the skeletal system and the muscular system to help support, so that those one-sided actions that we do so for so much, for so many years as an athlete, can be kind of offset by some of the training and the coaching and the stuff that I teach.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, Crystal, because so many sports are asymmetric, right? So being able
Right.
to train beyond the game, even when you're in the game, is so important just for functionality and lifelong health. So just doing the reps and the skills is not enough to be strong long term and holistically, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Well, we know why we wanted Crystal a part of the alliance. A lot of what she's saying here today is just a really the tip of the iceberg to the knowledge, the education, and the approach that Crystal takes. Crystal, would love to know from you what made this opportunity, when you have honestly so many opportunities to choose from, what made this one the next best step for you?
Well, I think that the younger we can kind of understand the concept of there's more to movement than practice and games, right? There's so much more to movement. And so once we step out of, right, as a human kind of transitions out of this athleticism and into, right, beyond the game and into their career, it's really important to traverse what movement looks like as you kind of transition, right, from one place to another. And so understanding that these people still have value, they still have abilities, and they can still utilize and move their body outside of practice and outside of the game. And so I think that, when you presented me with this opportunity, I thought, what a great idea and what an honor to be able to teach these people at this pivotal moment in transition where I was kind of at a similar place and I had a mentor who saw my skill sets and my drive, and so I thought, this what a great opportunity to be able to give back to this group of people who are just like in this little incubation period. Life is just really about to start. So I just love that transition period, and it just really lights me on fire.
Yeah. You and I both, coach.
Right.
You and
Oh,
I
I
both.
have one other thing.
Yeah.
I have one other thing that I wanted to add, Julie. The other piece is that I love to use like when we're training, and so I really want to be able to share this with as many people as possible. And it's the aspect of like visualization. So I kind of alluded and talked to this a little bit in the beginning, but I really like to share like different ways that you can really tune in to your body, to its musculature, to the skeletal system. So I really like to use visualizations in terms of like, different power poses. Again, picturing you taking that winning shot, landing that interview, right? And to use that type of visualization while we're physically using the body. Of course, I can't help but like move my hands around while I'm talking about that. But so I think that that's a really important aspect because that gets so many more things kind of firing and online when we incorporate that aspect as well.
Mm. One of the things I love about what you do is that visualization aspect, because I think to draw it alongside the physical and the kinesthetic movement that our athletes experience and are so familiar with, sometimes there's a disconnect in how do I use my mind while I'm actively in play, right? So you quite literally give our students reps outside of gameplay so that they can then transfer those skill sets into gameplay, which, I know as a former collegiate athlete that, man, I wish I had that. Right
Right.
now that I know the benefits of it, it's that old saying, like, man, I wish I knew then what I know now. Yeah.
Right. So that's another reason why I said yes. I'm like, let's teach them now.
Right. What do you
Right,
think the
right.
benefit of them knowing now is, Crystal? How is that going to kind of ripple through their 20s, their 30s, their 40s? What do you think?
So I feel like it gives them that resilience, the true grit that I was talking about in the beginning. So because things are gonna not go the way that you planned, right? It's like we have this plan, and but this is what's gonna happen in life. And so the more that you can be like, really good to like pivot, right? It's just so important. So for example, when the game's not going well, right, when the score's not set in your direction, right, or you take the shot and it doesn't go the way that you planned, to have this mental resilience to be able to let that go and visualize instead what you want to see can help turn your performance, turn the game, and turn the score around. And that's not just in the game, that's again beyond it, right? So like if that interview didn't go the way that you wanted, it's not going to completely derail you and rock you kind of off. You're just going to pivot and we're going to say, okay, what's next? um so that's why I think it would be super beneficial to know now.
Totally. Now, what athletes do you feel like need this service now? So, just talk to me a little bit about maybe the experience that an athlete might be in that you believe this could be you stepping in the room with you and training like an athlete beyond the game, fitness beyond the game. What are the athletes, what are maybe they're experiencing right now that's going to indicate to them, hey, I need to get in the room with Coach Crystal? Any thoughts about
Sure. So if we're yeah, so if we're dealing with any pain or injury related to the game that you're playing, right? Anything that's maybe causing them to be benched at this moment in time and they're feeling frustrated. So that's a really great time and opportunity to kind of step into the room with me because, virtual training, it can go anywhere with you, which is really great. But also the functional training that I coach really supports the body again as it inevitably ages. And so that is, so if they're lacking power, right? They're lacking energy. They're feeling really tired at the end of a game, and not having the power that they would like to have. So those are really good signs and indicators, right? That you're just hitting more fatigue points during the game, or you're getting any repetitive popping or clicking because of using a joint or shoulder too much. Those are all signs that, it's time to kind of step into the room with me and take a look at, okay, so how is what you're doing in your sport causing this, and then let's take a step back and look at your other body mechanics surrounding that to help support that particular movement, repetitive movement, right? Like you said, a lot of sports are asymmetrical.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's okay if they're in season. If they're in season experiencing some of these things, it may be wise for them to step into one of our train like an athlete programs.
Correct.
How about off-season athletes or post-season or even preseason? What are the benefits for those student athletes to step in the room with Coach Crystal?
So I think that for those folks, working on functional training and what I like to call primal movement is really where I shine. So I really, really like getting people back to the way the body is designed to squat, right? Like deep squats, and the way that the body is supposed to roll and tumble and move, and to be able to do all of these things are going to help make them more mobile and more resistant to injury when they are in season. So I would say that those are kind of really key things when you're training, is to make sure that when we're squatting, what the squat looks like, right? When we're doing the push-up, what the push-up looks like, so that when we come back to the game, we have the proper function, right? We have the proper form, and we also have a lot of nice power, because that's where a lot of that comes from, is when you're training in the off season. But I think it's really important to, as folks are kind of stepping into this, to understand and read their body language that speaks to them and listen to it. So many times we'll be experiencing pain, and either we panic or we ignore it. And that's something that happens as a society. And so I really like to be advocates for people in the off season to say, like, oh, okay, let's not just like shrug off the fact that, like, oh, my shoulder's it's just going to feel like this for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be that way. And so, in fact, that's why it's so important to train outside of the game, so that when you come back, you can come back stronger, healthier.
Mm. Oh, speaking my language. Let's just say we speak athlete here at the
Yeah.
Alliance, and pain is an indicator. And I love what you said. It doesn't have to be that way, right? And so many of us as athletes, I mean, it's inevitable that there's either
Right.
injury or pain in some context, right?
Mhm.
So, when I hear you say that, Crystal, everybody should be in the room with you. If you are in the Alliance, everybody should get in the room with Coach Crystal. And so honored to have you, Crystal. Before we close out today, any last tips for our athletes or even our partners that partner with us for us to service their athletes? Any last thoughts just in your arena that you want to share?
Yeah, well, I would say that, in addition to consistently moving your body and listening to the cues, it's also really important to fuel the body properly, right? So, what we're putting in, and not only necessarily what we're eating, but also what we're watching on social media and what we're consuming, because again, that's feeding the way the brain looks at the body, the way it builds, confidence, and also body image. So, I think it's really important, because you are what you eat, right? We are what we consume. And so that's really, really important. So not only, what it is that we're eating, but what it is that we're watching and consuming with our eyes and our brains is really, really important, because there's a lot of BS out there.
Fact.
Right.
Fact. Gosh, so good, Crystal. Thank you so much for joining us today. As an alliance, our mission is truly to support these athletes in their game and beyond. And we know how important holistic and taking a proactive approach to movement and fitness is when it comes to lifelong success and fulfillment for our athletes. So appreciate you, Crystal. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So, since we are a nonprofit, we invite you, our viewers, to join our mission to help fund all of these incredible resources for our athletes. There's really three ways to help us move this mission forward. One, if you're an athletic director, a leader, a coach, or a parent of students in their junior year of high school and beyond, you can become an aligned partner. This allows us to come in fully service your student athlete population. You can also become an aligned provider, just like Crystal. She's offering up her skill set and her wealth of knowledge to our athletes. So if that is something that maybe you have and would love to give back to this community, let's start that conversation. And then lastly, you can become a corporate sponsor. So if you're a business owner who has a heart for these athletes and you'd like to be a part of our mission and allow us to serve them at greater levels, definitely check us out at beyondthegamealliance.org. If you want to stay in the loop, I also recommend subscribing to our YouTube channel so that you can see our incredible interviews and all that happening here at Beyond the Game Alliance. All right, closing out for today. Thank you again, Coach Crystal. We will see you soon.